Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the hashtag Form Ni Gani ni Kurepresent, courtesy of Form Ni Gani. My name is Zinzi Kibiku. Let me start by apologizing for the late delay, a bit of technical issues, but we are here and the party is about to get started. So there's always that one question that we have lingering at the back of my mind, and of course, I'm sure also your mind, and that is, what does the future hold? It's been rather past a year since the COVID-19 pandemic had disrupted our way of life and the livelihoods that we know. And as we do our very best to continue to adjust while we try to get back into what we perceive as our normal way of life, a lot of things have been disrupted, our way of life. And the impact of it has been felt, especially on young Kenyans, particularly the youth. And that has been a long-lasting issue. This more so has been the case, especially when it comes to the reproductive rights of young people. And today, we shall be exploring the realities of the contraception for young Kenyan youth through their own voices, and we have an open conversation about how we can enable young Kenyans to realize their constitutional enshrined rights. Feel free to engage with us on our social media. Use the hashtag FormNigani by either seeing the handles that are appearing right below your screens, or by simply using the hashtag FormNikuRepresent. Either or will be fantastic. Now, young Kenyans have also told their own stories through their creativity and art, through music and theater. And today, guess what, ladies and gentlemen? We will be giving you a glimpse of that. And that's very significant for young people, especially when it comes to championing their contraceptive rights, their health rights. So joining us today to start this off, is Yvonne Okwara to give us her take on this issue. Yvonne Okwara is a senior anchor at Citizen TV and very well known for her hard-hitting news analysis, The Explainer. Yvonne Okwara is now joining us, and happy to have you.
Zinzi, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you also for tuning in today. I'm deeply honored to be part of this audacious conversation on the significance of young people championing contraceptive rights. You see, the true inclusion of young people's interest in the agenda to safeguard not just our country's future, but to also ensure that this very future is in the hands of reproductively healthy, empowered, and visible young people is pivotal for me. As a journalist who uses data or statistics to tell multidimensional stories that show how we're all connected, allow me to share some statistics with you. In a predominantly young country such as Kenya, with 74% of the population under the age of 35, it was inevitable that efforts to manage the pandemic would have such a disproportionate impact on the youth. In 2020, a report by Form Ni Gani revealed that the pandemic and the mitigation measures had a financial impact on at least 50% of young Kenyans. That's half of the youth population in this country, through reduced or lost incomes, raging unemployment that led to lost livelihoods. This simply means that the future of Kenyan youth and the future of the country are one and the same. It is for this reason that today's event, Form NikuRepresent, exists to give us a glimpse of the reality of young Kenyans. Despite the guarantees that have been made in our Constitution regarding comprehensive rights, which remain unimplemented, Kenyan youth remain optimistic about equitable and sustainable progress, however slow. The past 2 decades have borne witness to the remarkable growth in the Kenyan creative space. Now, beyond being just a source of necessary entertainment, the creative space has been a medium of common aspiration, a driver of diversity in perspectives, a symbol of identity, and a call to conscience on significant issues such as contraceptive rights and access. Creativity has thus made it possible for stories that are difficult, painful, or even taboo to be told without the direct heaviness or restrictions. This has offered youth an opportune space to take charge of their hopes, their dreams, and their aspirations through some powerful storytelling, performance art in theater, music, spoken word, visual art, and popular culture that have all played such a critical role in broadening societal views on democracy, participatory governance, and rights issues. This is why the Form Ni Gani movement in Kenya stands out. solely driven by creativity and innovation in championing contraceptive rights. Form Gani draws on the power of diverse storytelling mediums to enhance diversity and inclusivity. The movement started in response to the expanding policy and implementation gap, even when family planning is guaranteed by Kenya's Constitution and Health Act. Many Kenyans continue to lack access to both contraception and its information. In fact, here's another statistic for you. 49% of all pregnancies in Kenya are unintended. That's nearly half. So what then needs to be done? Well, I believe it starts with open conversations. Conversations that empower, that teach without biases, conversations that grant young people their agency and, most importantly, listen to their specific needs. We then need to reorient the healthcare system so it can act as a receptive space for young people's reproductive needs without any kind of biases. The system must abolish its existing stereotypical attitude towards young people who are seeking guidance on contraception. Thirdly, work needs to go into reducing the numerous social, political, and economic fault lines which continue to restrict contraceptive access for youth, which currently the pandemic has only served to compound. As a result, at least 2 in 5 Kenyan youth are living through a new reality, characterized by a weakened sexual and reproductive healthcare system with reduced access to contraceptives. Finally, while we have undeniably made progress over the years, this very gradual process has been majorly undone by this ongoing pandemic. Today, young Kenyans continue to gather in the same spirit that paved the way for open dialogue about their future in their own voice, saying, "Form ni kurepresent," by taking back their reproductive autonomy and demanding for their rights. And I hope that their voices are heard, because the future has never been more clear in terms of who it belongs to. That's you, the young people of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you all very much for listening to me today, and I cannot wait to hear the outcome of the conversations that we are about to have. Zinzi, back to you.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Yvonne. And on that note, let us kick off with the stories that showcase how Kenyan youth have engaged on the subject of contraceptives over this past 1 year alone. Now, this piece you're about to watch is based on a story by Valerie Kidavasi, a student of the University of Nairobi who won the hashtag Form ni kurepresent Writers Challenge. And it draws on the individual conflicts of youth, the ups and the downs, as they try to define for themselves their future and what it means for the society at this specific point. Here's the film Contrition.
Have you ever thought of flipping back the hands of time? To that moment when life wasn't so intertwined. To that moment when you still had a choice. By the time you receive this letter, I will probably be long buried. What? I'm not in the mood for birthday parties. Whose? I can't make it. Huh? Listen, sina do, maparu amenikazia. I lost that hassle. Huh? Okay. I hate to say this, but unless only to me fair. I know 32 years living with paros, observing me 24/7. Okay, so, okay, yes, okay.
What happened? No, by the way, Aki was just never disappointed in this party. Because I told Diana, the one get kamba shenye. Inacheza kiyaye.
So, Mato, did you story?
Speaking of Mato. Mato. Hey, you guys. I have some hot for you guys. Or some party, by the way. Unakumbuka last time nikikwambia tulikuwa tunaenda Simona JM.
Oh, Sato, sindio? What happened?
You know JM, na kuchocha and everything. So tumefika pale mwisha mayengs mingi wa kusema. So, nani JM amefika huko juu, alafu akadive in kwa maji.
Uongo.
Kumbe, hold up. So kumbe kudive in, kumbe shanzenye amevaa zilikuwa loose. No. Usame ngeko maji.
Wacha.
Lakini shots, amezecha tu pale tu juice na float to you. Lakini
JM. Okay, guys. Seems like it's ready before we've started. Si mnajua
Guys, look, I don't like formality, so why don't we party?
A man I will know until the end of time.
Mato! Okay guys, now that JM is here, someone read that part. Waidera.
Yes, Waidera. Okay. Happy birthday to you.
Hey!
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mato. Happy birthday to you.
No.
Are you sure? No, it's alright. I know she's solo, she's a good lady. Yeah? Go for it. Go for it. Go for it.
All right. Would you know how much polar bear weighs?
No. Why would I even know such a thing?
You see, it's so heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy enough to break the ice.
Oh my god. You're so lame.
Where did you learn how to sing like that?
Now that's a proper joke. I know it's such a terrible joke.
Ladies and gentlemen, the party begins.
Do you like me?
love you. Mikono ni bangili, miguu ni Santana. Sura ya mdoli, ha sexy eyes. Nitakwenda kwa miguu, siku kukutana na ye. Nimweleze ya moyoni hali sina. Anipe dozi ya maumivu, yanakatesa kamoyo kangu. Uvumilivu, ati mwambie yanaonisibu, yanakatesa kamoyo kangu. Now I need you. Hakuna wakunibembeleza, wakunituliza, hakuna wakunisikiliza.
Hi. How are you? Hi.
Please, not now.
What?
So, there's something I have to tell you.
Shoot.
I'm pregnant.
We must find a way out.
What do you mean, find a way out, Jeff?
You know what I mean. You're not born yesterday. Listen, and listen to me carefully, Waitera. I'm not having that child. I am simply not.
All right, listen, but this is our baby. I want it. How can you talk about love and you want to take away the one thing that shows our love?
Stop that love nonsense.
How convenient. When you wanted me, you loved me. Now that I'm pregnant, we're suddenly not allowed to talk about love.
I'm not even sure if that child is mine.
Jeff.
Mariana nina kapepo.
Jeff.
Hi, bro.
What's up?
I'm good.
Pop in. Actually, I have some good news. I got a job.
Dad got it for you.
So what? Whether it's Dad who got me the job or not, the most important thing is that I got a job and I'm moving out.
You're leaving me with those wretched people.
Cheer up, brother. At least you'll crash at my place several times, huh? With the new girlfriends. Unajua?
At least you have things working for you.
Don't worry. Just know that I got you back.
I always have yours too. Listen, I need a favor.
Favor?
I need some money.
Wow, okay.
I will refund it.
Money for what?
Acha maswali mingi. Will you give me or not?
Okay. Sasa basi. So how much do you need?
30K.
Jeff, 30K.
Kwa nini mob?
30K. Wow, okay. Sasa basi. Shika. And please, just know this is my rent money. Once you sort your things out, nirudishe pesa yangu.
Sawa.
Sasa.
Sawa.
And brother, how is Waithera?
Takushow.
Cheers.
And now on to other news. The upmarket and genteel neighborhood of Kilalashwa woke up today to the shocking news of the death of a young lady, Waithera, who met her death after a botched abortion in a backstreet clinic in Nairobi. Her boyfriend, Jeff, got overwhelmed by the sheer weight of contrition arising from the fact that he was the one who insisted on the abortion, as he was not ready to be a father.
She was our only hope. He was our only son. Children never stop to think how their choices affect other people. Our daddy. I want her where I can visit and tend to her grave. Our culture says she will be buried side by side. Your home? It is very far.
Chakutumaini sina ila damu yake Yesu, sina wema wa kutosha dhambi zangu kuziosha.
Jeff took his life just hours after his lover passed on. Waithera's story adds to the worrying statistics of unplanned pregnancies among the youth. Our news reporter Dennis met the grief-stricken families struggling to come to terms with the loss of children in the prime of their youth.
Ama niwe brother, or maybe niwe da, cause Buddha alinga da. Sijui niwe mama ama niwe brother, or maybe niwe da, cause Buddha alinga da.
Yeah, blena ingia naivas, nika uchumi iko chini, jukweli economy iko chini. Economy iko chini, ndio maana kwa hoteli bea chakula ziwaga juu. lakini bili zikuja kwa meza kama zimeangalishwa chini. Maisha ni zigzaga juu chini, hata uruke juu chini. Fruits of the Holy Spirit hazipatikani juu chini. Magharibi kusini, vijana huko chini wanazidi kuzini, wazee huko juu wanazidi cheza chini. Na niliapa kwamba mimi sitacheza chini, sitacheza chini kama reti ya watoto wenye wanazidi kulea watoto iko juu. Jua kuna shida hapa chini, kuna shida hapa chini. Kama kazi ni kushindana, kushinda hapa chini. Bei ya vitu ziko juu na standard iko chini. Magonjwa ziko hapa chini juu, hospitali ziko juu na madawa ziko chini. Vitanda ziko juu, ndoto ziko chini. Na wewe papo hapo unafanya juu chini, unapanda juu kuleta watoto chini.
Niwe mama mother, ama niwe brother, or maybe niwe da, cause Buddha alinga da. Sijui niwe mama mother, ama niwe brother, or maybe niwe da, cause Buddha alinga da.
Kwa kuwa mathe ni mathematics, hesabu yako inafaa kuwa juu ndio uweze kusurvive hapa chini. Kusurvive hapa chini nataka mtu roho juu. Hapa chini line ya watoto kwa kinyozi ziko juu. Nikukuambia ni nani baba hapa chini. Niko na balcony sifai kucheza chini. Hapa chini kuna mwiba, mkitoka kwa nyumba make sure mmedunga maraba nyinyi. Baba alihepa akawacha vitu zikiwa chini. Mama amebaki anatafuta juu chini, anatafuta juu chini ili family rise. Not tuweze family rise na family rise. So lazima hii family rise ka family rise, hii family rise. Najua rate ya social distance ilikuwa iko juu, lakini vitu ziko zinafanyika hapa chini. Vitu bado zinafanyika hapa chini, lakini access za vitu ndio ziko hapa chini. After hii mwaka rate ya watoto nazaliwa kwa maternity ward ziko juu na hospitali ziko chini. Unatoa mtu huko juu na mleta hapa chini, azidi kuwa hapa chini. Tukiwa hapa chini tutakuwa hapa chini, so lazima tupunguze wenye tutazidi kukua hapa chini.
Sijui niwe mama mother, ama niwe brother, or maybe niwe da, cause Buddha alinga da. Sijui niwe mama mother, ama niwe brother, or maybe niwe da, cause Buddha alinga da.
The sense of urgency around contraception is clear. And in the words of Teardrops, the young gentleman you've just heard, hapa chini kuna mwimba. Mkitoka kwa nyumba, make sure mumedunga raba. But it's not the straightforward reality of it. There are many factors that shape contraception access for the Kenyan youth, and the pandemic has served to magnify the impact. With us today is Helen Abatoni. She is a journalist and analyst with a specialty in the Kenyan security and media. Abatoni has worked with the Future Africa Forum, a community of the young African leaders influencing inclusive policy decision-making and policy implementation within the continent. She has also served on the regional coordination of the African women in media, working to positively impact the way of media functions in the relation to telling African stories for the African woman. Abatoni will be engaging us today in a conversation around youth experiences, creativity as a form of expression to agitate for inclusivity, and what the future holds for youth's contraceptive rights. Abatoni now takes the stage. Over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Zinzi, for the warm introduction. And good evening to you, our audience. Before we get into the discussion on what the future holds for contraception in Kenya, I'd like to introduce my panelists, starting with you, Onyango Otieno, also known as Rick's Poet, a trauma therapist and co-founder of Fatuma's Voice. And our other panelist is Gadhoni Kimoyu, a TV producer and women's sexual health advocate. So over the years, there have been several factors at play when it comes to contraception in Kenya, be it political, economic, and cultural, and some of them have served as barriers. And so I want to hear from you, what is one pivotal moment in your life that completely shifted your view on the subject of contraception prior to COVID-19? We can start with you, Onyango.
Well, I wouldn't say there was one pivotal moment in time. Well, growing up, I grew up at a time when they started showing these trust condom advertisements, John Kerry and stuff. But Tumechilo was the one I really remember because I was a teenager at that time. And it was one of, I think, the most successful of my generation, because tumechil was such a buzzword in high school those days. Even though I don't know how much people really abstained from sex. Yeah, but that was it for me.
How about you, Gadoni?
Honestly, at that very moment, also, I could say that was my biggest contraception education as a young adult. I mean, for whatever reason, everyone would just flash their fingers. Whether you said the words or not, you just flashed your fingers and everyone knew exactly what you were saying. And I'd been telling him earlier, growing up, I don't remember one moment where someone sat me down and told me, this is what contraceptions are, this is how you use them, these are the side effects. I never got that conversation from anyone growing up. So really, Nipoa Kuchil or Tumechil was really the campaign. Yeah, and a pivotal moment for me as well.
So it's interesting that both of you did not learn about contraception within the traditional setting, as I think, which is the same case as many Kenyans and anyone else within the African community. And it also links to my next question, which is related to how culture has really served as a hindrance to access to contraception. And also the conversations about sex, even safe sex, is not really open. We talk about sex in hushed tones, and it still hasn't changed. So I wanted to ask the both of you, how do you think we can use the creative space which you're a part of to build on open conversations around this?
Yes. I think first things first, we need to change the tone of how we talk about sex. Because a lot of times when we talk about sex, and especially sex for women, it is crowded with so much shame. We first need to take that out. The songs we write, the poetry we put on stage, the shows we put on stage, everything that we do in the entertainment industry needs to start taking away the shame from the women, because it's always, look at the man with so many women. And the minute a woman has as many partners, the first thing people think about is, she's rotten, she's a prostitute. But for the man, it's a power thing. I mean, the moment we start to treat sex with maybe stop giving sex too much power, then it's going to be an easier conversation going forward. Yeah.
As you respond to this, Rix, how do we ensure that also the conservatives of the society are brought along in this conversation? How do we make them comfortable with the conversation?
We can't make them comfortable. No change is going to happen without uncomfortability.
Yeah.
That's just it, because actually most of the time, for example, when we were young and new concepts were being introduced to us, our brains had to expand. So something has to shift when new information is being communicated, for example, right? And maybe as a response to that as well, our entertainment scene is part of something else that we are all part of, like culture, the cultures we come from, right? And every time we talk about how society is nurtured, we have to put into account that the people in power are the people who shape what society looks like. And we live in overtly patriarchal societies, right? So most times when we mention society, we're actually talking about what the man thinks.
Yeah, it's true. That's very true.
You get?
Yeah.
So that shapes everything. It shapes entertainment, it shapes family, it shapes religion, it shapes sports, everything.
It shapes
right?
the news.
The news.
And the news is everything. The most important.
Yeah. So you just sit, actually, the other day I was just thinking through, in the songs I have heard in my life, there are very many instances where like a male artist would talk very badly about a woman's body, right? But the opposite is almost non-existent. You don't hear chicks singing about how short men are, or they had small bats or whatever, or stuff like that. I don't hear that, yeah? So I think there's a deeper conversation to this. when we want to put it into about contraceptives, there's a deeper conversation to it. How do we really see each other, you know? And so work for the artist in this instance is also to educate themselves outside the society they come from, you know, because sometimes when you want to reflect what's happening within, you have to be without. Get outside, see what's going on outside and see things from like a bird's eye view. Then you can be a bit more objective with your communication. But what's happening even in our creative space is there is, especially like there is no nurturing for, that space is not nurtured institutionally from the beginning. Yeah. So the people who have, you know, are dominating that space, most of them are also in the trap. So they don't really know what's going on. You know, it's really something like we really need to look into.
That's a very interesting point you made, and so did you, Gadoni. And so when COVID hit, obviously we've heard that the conversation is not really being held outside the creative space. When COVID hit, young people were mostly affected, and this was even worsened when it came to access to contraception. And when looking at statistics, they show that 2 in 5 young Kenyans have limited access to contraception due to supply constraints or lack of access points. So my question on this is, how do you think young Kenyans are coping with this new reality?
It's really unfortunate that we're going through a pandemic at the moment, but that does not mean that because we're in a pandemic, every other thing is not happening. Though the saddest part about the world we live in is that nothing stops, whether there's a pandemic or not. You have to figure out how you are going to get food on your table, how you're going to get drinking water. I mean, I saw someone say on Twitter, someone from India said, if you can social distance, you can wash your hands, and you can afford a mask, you're extremely privileged. There are people who can social distance at the moment because they work in crowded spaces. The exact same thing is happening with the contraceptives. The people who are currently, the younger people who can now access contraceptives are highly privileged, highly privileged. Maybe they come from backgrounds where they have guardians who speak to them and can take them to places where they can access the contraception, whether for free or for money. And the people who come from, as a person who comes from the hood, I know for sure there's so many people, so many young people who've been affected by the COVID-19 pandemic and not being able to access contraceptives. That does not mean that they're not having sex. It just means that in a few years, we're going to be dealing with kids who've been, or a younger generation that is so traumatized because maybe they had an illegal abortion, or maybe they had a contraceptive that wasn't good for them, or maybe a morning after pill every other weekend that's ruined their whole reproductive system. And the gag is that even when you buy morning after pill over the counter, they don't say anything to you. So imagine just going to get contraceptives from wherever, or not even being able to access, not knowing how to count your safe days. Like it really is a whole bad thing that's going on right now. As much as we have to fight the pandemic, we also have to fight for these other things. And I was just reading, and I realized that NHIF does not even cover contraceptives. And that's supposed to be our health system, you know? That should be our medical insurance, but it does not cover contraceptives. So really, we're in for a tough time. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if getting basic needs during the pandemic has been difficult, how harder would it be to get contraceptives? You know, you can just imagine, and especially for marginalized groups in this country, in this continent, in this world, who in their day-to-day life, with or without a pandemic, it's hard to exist. How much harder must it be during this time? And we don't see those guys on the news. We don't see them. They're not covered on the papers. They're not anywhere on any grid, you know? So that's where the work is.
Okay, so with these challenges that you just mentioned, do you feel that there are any measures that have been put in place by the government to address these new challenges that came up, or those that already existed? And if none, what do you think young people within the creative space or out of it, basically stakeholders, can do to ensure that these measures are put in place?
I think through the pieces that we make, we can make enough noise to hold the government accountable and to remind the younger generation that they're not alone, that we're gonna get them what they need. It might not be overnight, but we're gonna fight until it's gotten. And I mean, forums like Form Gani continue to do the work. So with these conversations, then we're not forgotten. So we can constantly keep pushing, and I know something will happen. Yeah.
For me, I would need campaigns like this to happen over and over and more frequently all over the country. I think we need more resources, especially for education and information, because we might imagine that fine, when a girl comes of age, she will just know what contraceptive to use. And the other conversation is about how detached boys and men are from this conversation, right? And yet they are part of partnerships. They are part of families. They need to understand. In fact, among the biggest barriers for contraceptives access is the attitudes men and husbands have in families. So I think we also need to start being a bit more comprehensive with our approach in educating, and also how we make access available to people.
Okay. So with this last question, where we close our session, our very short session, and I ask, how do you see contraception or the conversation around it evolving in the next 10, 15, or even 5 years from here?
Well, I mean, we're not looking so bad. 10 years from now, we might actually be doing way better if we change our ways, if we change the way we educate people on contraception, if we continue to empower both men and women on the conversations of contraception, because, well, the woman is the one who bears the pain of contraception. The man will always jump up to say, usitumie hiyo, nilisikia hiyo, iko na nini na nini. Like it's ridiculous that this foreign thing is being put in my body, but it's the man who jumps up to say, oh, you can't have that because it's going to limit us from doing this and this and this. And when you look at it, really, it's the man looking out for himself more than he's looking out for you. I mean, I've seen now men who will get a vasectomy and talk about it, and they're not ashamed of it. And I mean, if we've gotten to that point where men are talking and are getting vasectomies, we're really on the right road. We're on the right track. Yes.
It's funny you mentioned that, because it's just yesterday that I was having a conversation about some guy I was talking to, and he was telling me he's going to get a vasectomy, and he's the first man I've ever had such a conversation with, ever in my life,
A Kenyan man?
Yeah, a Kenyan man. Like, it was like, I think I'm done with this, and he wants to finish up with siring kids and all that. But so yes, there is, but still, like him, he has access to information. He's well read. He has, all these privileges. I don't know if a man in Mandera, for example, would have information about the same and would want, to do that on his body, as opposed to his wife carrying all that, burden.
Burden, yeah.
Exactly. So for me, it really, governance is a very pertinent piece in looking at the future of contraceptive access. Because it's through governance that policies are made, funds are disbanded, and people are able to actually access these things, especially in the grassroots. Yeah. So for me, we need more lobby groups, even like young people. Everybody needs to be involved in this, because we are talking about the future of a country. The people who are most productive right now have very poor access to contraception. That is a pandemic.
And the education, contraception education as well.
It's a pandemic, So I think we just have a lot of work to do. Yeah.
Thank you. And that brings us to the end of our panel, a short panel. And the takeaway is that, I think you can agree with this, that there is a need for political commitment or political will to ensure that there's one, access to contraception, and also that people are looked after. And thank you very much to our panelists.
Thank you for having us.
Well, before I let you guys go, where are you running to?
Oh.
Relax.
It's
Before I do
Curfew.
Kimuyu, there's something you said that really caught my attention, right? How do we begin to have this birds and the bees conversation with our children right from the house, as young as they're 2, 3? I believe that the conversation of sex should not be taught by teachers or entertainment. It should start at home, by parents, by that older brother and sister. How do we begin to have that in African homes?
Well, I'd say it's very important to include sex in the institutes. I think home is where we start. I have a daughter who's 11. We've already started having that conversation.
Yes.
The last time I went to see my gynecologist, I took her with me. And it's by instilling that confidence about her body being her own and the decisions that she makes for her body are for herself.
Right.
When you start to instill those things at a young age, by the time they grow up, they know. They don't have to worry about, oh, what is my boyfriend gonna think? What is my husband gonna think? This is my body. I am the sailor. I am the one who's driving this body.
Yeah.
I do not care about what another person says.
Speaking of which, Rix, how do we engage men on the sexual health of a woman? The reason why I say that is because, unfortunately, it was a hilarious tweet, but it had a bit of honesty behind it, that some men think that all women get their period at the end of the month. There's also what you also mentioned, Kimuyu, that you take a certain contraceptive, a man doesn't want you to take that contraceptive. Yeah. So how do we begin to hold men accountable, or how do we begin to have that conversation with men on how they see the sexual health of a woman?
Well, I was previously part of that team you just mentioned. I used to think it's at the end of every month, this is it for every woman.
For every woman.
So it's like salary, just waiting.
30 days, here you go. Here's your 3 days.
But I think the more I educated myself, the more I came to know this stuff, like there are even women who have irregular periods, and it's crazy. So for me, it's part of a larger conversation about like respect for one another,
right.
And the fact that, again, as I mentioned before, we live in a very patriarchal culture, patriarchal society. It starts from there. It starts from the way we tell girls how to sit, and we don't tell boys the same.
Yeah.
It starts from those very small things. When they start seeing from that young age, it's gonna pour out to respect for women's bodies as they become adults.
All right, Helen, is there something you'd like to add?
No, I think they've pretty much said everything. Thank you.
All right, okay, fantastic. So I'll allow Helen and her team to walk off stage as we get ready for the next part of the discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those were some quite provoking statements there that have already started the conversation online. The hashtag to use is Form Nikurepresent, or use the hashtag Form Nigani. All right. Thank you so much, Rix, Kimuyu, and Helen. If you've just joined us, we are taking your questions and comments all throughout the show. Do join the conversation via social media using the hashtag FormNikuRepresent, or following us on the hashtag FormNigani, be it on Facebook, Twitter, on Instagram, whichever it is that you would like. Up next, they are a collective of amazing young talent who stand out in how they represent for their own fellow youth through their music, as well as painting pictures of the experiences that the youth per se see as challenges. They've decided to put their own part of this conversation through their own different sorts of arts, all right? So introducing up next is AZ Cocktail, Lavix, as well as Jasmine Wanjiru with their own piece.
Yeah, nimejipina kondiko kwanza yaleta nani Lavix, yeah, AZ Cocktail, you know, Baba Taifa.
Niko na yangu kila place, mi nachunga maisha. Vipi brother, vipi sister, jo magonjwa jatisha. Mi sitaki jo lawama na sitaki jo madrama. Niwe baba na we kabla tujajipanga. So itabidi nimechill, mwanaume niwe still. Kani shule nimalize nipate kazi na mavazi kama shati tuwe safe. Basi shati zingatie maadili nazo njia za kupanga uzazi. Vijana tujipange, tupange mimba za mapema sisi tuzuie tuzikate. Tupange panga uzazi na maisha iwe sawa. Tupange mimba za mapema sisi tuzuie tuzikate. Tupange panga uzazi na maisha iwe sawa.
Nimejipina kondiko ya leather nani mshia daizi kama kuna CD. Sweetie karatasi haina tamu kabisa. Anadai ajikate kama nyama eguzani. Nadai ni mkate sina rada ya mtoi. Staki mangori malawama kabisa. Nitashindwa majukumu sijitebe na mkate. Nadai tujipange kabla kumwaga ndani. Nipange toka nje nrudi mbanyu na downi. Mnyonyi stocking baby show na sachet ya pampas. Ni bebe joka toi na furaha ya super daddy. Na kama sivyo basi ngono tia.
Vijana tujipange,
tupange
mimba za mapema sisi tuzuie tuzikate.
Tupange
panga uzazi na maisha iwe sawa.
Tupange
mimba za mapema sisi tuzuie tuzikate.
Tupange
panga uzazi na maisha iwe sawa.
Yeah, habari ndo hiyo shambia. Protection muhimu mwanzeni. Yeah, raundita bidi tumejipanga.
Omni ku represent wale machali na mashiwa mtaa. Lazima ujue wewe unafaa. Mona kashika utamana kudua. Omni ku represent wale machali na mashiwa mtaa. Lazima tujicheki na tujiprotect for the generation that comes through. Sila waku hala unajicheki, wakuamini nani real nani fake. Keep your mind awake usibleki. Oh, you gotta keep on shining through. Don't slow down, get on the move. Slow dancing, get on the groove.
Kila siku nikilala ninaota, optionia wanakuja kunichota. Ninaamka usingizi ninaanza kujipanga. Nina madeni na watoto pia wako, hawajakula huku shule wanaenda. Sina mke alichomoka nilivyosota.
Omni ku represent wale machali na mashiwa mtaa. Lazima ujue wewe unafaa. Mona kashika utamana kudua. Omni ku represent wale machali na mashiwa mtaa. Lazima tujicheki na tujiprotect for the generation that comes through. Omni ku represent wale machali na mashiwa mtaa. Lazima ujue wewe unafaa. Mona kashika utamana kudua. Omni ku represent wale machali na mashiwa mtaa. Lazima tujicheki na tujiprotect for the generation that comes through. Pia mtaani wakiuliza hadi lini fahari watumiza. It's a man society. You and me can bring sobriety. Free your mind from mental slavery. Bring out all that reverie. We'll overcome these tragedies. There's hope for today and a better tomorrow. It's an indication that many seasons will come and go, but you'll be left standing strong.
As Copter, Levex, and Jasmine Wanjiru. First of all, can we talk about Jasmine's voice? That was heavenly. That was beautiful. And on that note, we shift to a conversation on how society and policy makers can take action that supports inclusivity and the youth's desires for agency, with access to contraception, information, and methods of choice guarantees. So, joining us today is Wanja Maina. She's right here. in a beautiful Ankara outfit, an international development expert with a decade of success, experience in disability rights and gender issues. Wanja sits as the UNFPA's Kenya's Youth Advisory Board and a recipient of the National Diversity and Inclusion Awards and recognition as the most influential youth with a disability in Kenya. Wanja, your CV itself speaks for you. Over to you.
So good evening, young people, wherever you're watching us from. Thank you again. So thank you for joining us. And really, as we have a very enriching discussion about contraception. When I was preparing for this, it all started when we were having an informal conversation and we were saying, are we talking about contraception? Are we talking about family planning? Because sometimes in Kenya, we risk interchanging the two words and sometimes it becomes catastrophic. I am not alone. I'm joined by two panelists here. It just so happens that Rachel is my friend and then I have Kenneth. Maybe you can take a second and introduce yourself.
I'm a Pan-African activist and human rights defender, and also as a child activist. And I convene a social movement called Question for Grassroots United. It's a network of grassroots activists, student activists, and community organizers based in Malawi, that is the board around International Kenya. Young women leadership in
That's impressive, Kenneth.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Kenneth Okwara. I work for an organization called the Africa Center for People, Institutions and Society. We are a think tank, a research organization of young people who are interested in getting young people to do analysis and get credible information out there for young people to get involved in public policy and to be engaged in civic governance and these issues. So I'm very grateful to be here to contribute to this conversation. Thank you.
And I am sure this will be so enriching because we have Rachel who does a lot of grassroots organizing and you're in sort of policy academia. And I'll start off with you, Kenneth. We have a lot of policies, a lot of plans, a lot of things on paper. Article 43, for example, of the Constitution talks about right to health, highest attainable possible health, including right to reproductive health. We have the Health Act. We have a lot of, ESA Compact. We have, we are signatory to almost everything. But on the ground, as the young people say, things are different. So what is the missing link? What is the disconnect? Where do we fall off from the good, well-intended policies and what is happening on the ground in the realities of young people in Kenya?
Right, I agree with you. Our country is renowned for making good policies, making good law. Our constitution is an example across the world for being one of the most progressive. I think in terms of knowledge, in terms of putting the things that need to be done together, we excel as Kenyans. Right now in Parliament, we are struggling with how to change the constitution. To answer your question, I believe myself that we have made a lot of policies that if you look at them, even on the SRHR issues, we have policies that target young people. You can almost pinpoint objectives in many of the policies that can address the issues we're talking about. The gap comes when we come to implementation, and it's when government is needed to, for example, invest in those things. So we have policies done very well. Then we have county governments who sometimes were underfunded. And in many cases, they are oriented towards building hospitals and getting nurses and things like that. And when it comes to funding the issues we're talking about, for example, on SRHR, on contraception, that budgeting process seems to forget young people. And for me, I think it's also because we do not educate the people who are in those, who are doing budgeting, or as young people, we are not participating in those processes. So if they say in Nairobi West tomorrow, there is a Nairobi county government that are doing the budget, why young people don't go there and say, we want a center out there that it's youth-friendly, where young people can go and learn and do the things we are seeing here beautifully that can get young people to improve their health-seeking behavior. So one thing is funding. The other thing is inclusion of young people in those processes so that they can inform how the budget, how the policy itself speaks to young people. And I can go on and on and on about many of them.
Rachel, what do you have to say about that? What's the missing link?
I think first and also like to add in terms of the policy implementation, the strategy that is being used in terms of implementation. Because for me, even if we say like we want youth-friendly clinics or service provider, there's one bit of saying they are there or we want them, but in terms of how friendly are they? And when I mean how friendly are they, and especially when we talk about young people, I have to be very categorical, also as a feminist, that women, we are not homogeneous, and more so young women. Because also we fall that category of youth. So if you want these services that are more homogeneous, we need to understand that we have also young women who are sex workers, we have young women who are LGBTQ, we have young women also who are living with disability. So when we try to shift, even when we look in terms of the implementation, we try to shift understanding on how we need to implement, it becomes a challenge. And if you look now, for example, during COVID, because also as a movement, we are working, ensuring also we are pushing the government to ensure that SHR services, contraception being part of it, and family planning was part of essential services. You would see even within the part that was being put was male condoms, not female condom. I have to be very clear. Yeah. Male condom, which is sure. Yeah. And oral contraceptive, but they were not looking like IUD, they were not looking, if for example you want to use implants, how accessible are they? And if you look in terms of also the payment, they say it's free, but when you go to the clinic, it's not free.
Maybe Rachel, just I know you can go on about it, but you've talked about youth-friendly contraceptives and youth-friendly facilities.
And this one have to be clear, public hospitals, not private, public hospitals.
Maybe I could ask, what are the characteristics of a youth-friendly health facility, in your opinion?
First, for me, like it depends. I have to be sure, because I'm also that young person, as much as I'm talking under certain authority. Is a facility when I get in, I want to be discriminated based on my gender. I wouldn't be discriminated, and also it has to be accessible. Accessible are they? And for me now, when you talk about what Kenneth was saying about service provider, how many even public hospitals do we have, for example, in Mathare constituency that youth can access? So there's one bit of talking about the health space is available, but you see also there's also this kind of contradiction. When we talk about contraception and SHR issues, most of the time they're not seen as health, right to health. People only think when you talk about right to health, especially now during a pandemic, is how you can get, for example, now COVID places for testing and everything. But you're forgetting also, contraception also falls under health. If I'm not health in terms of accessing, on how I can prevent pregnancy, and also let's say also family planning, it becomes a challenge for most young people.
I think then, you know, what I'm picking is that for a facility to be friendly, it has to be accessible, the attitude of the health worker, amongst issues like affordability. And then I'll come back to...
But now, when now come in terms of correction, in terms of policymaker, the government of Kenya says clearly in Article 43, the way you are saying, access to health, it's a fundamental human rights issue. It should be free. And if you're saying it should be free, you should not allow to say it needs to be affordable. Because when you say it needs to be affordable, it means now there's privatization. So it should be free.
Okay.
The thing I may add is when we say in the Constitution that health is a right, they say also in that Constitution it's a progressive right, meaning government is working towards it. We might not achieve it today, but government is trying to spend on it, trying to invest on it. And the reality is across the world, it's not only government that will be able to provide these services. So they work with private sector, they work with civil society, they work with public-private partnerships. So that's where the issue of affordability must come in. There will be facilities that are funded by government. And from my previous point, we already have a gap there. Because government is spending a lot of the money on the other things, which are also important. For example, right now, a lot is going into COVID, which is also important. But because government has those things, then that's where now we must tap into resources from other people, from private sector, international development, agencies, and things like that. So the issue of affordability is important because in your neighborhood, if you're staying in somewhere on Thika Road, you should be able to get one. If the one for government is closed or they have gone there and they don't have the female condom or they don't have the emergency
the
pills,
option that I want,
the one you want, which is a way of empowering everyone to be able to get what they want, there must be an alternative. And that alternative is where the issue of affordability comes in.
Maybe, maybe because I know
I have a contrary opinion on that. Yeah, because I have a contrary opinion on that. Because I think if, for example, we look in terms of young people, if you look at the unemployment rate, how many young people are having jobs to be able to say they can afford what is privatized that's supposed to be provided by the government for free? Because I think also as people also in different spaces and different stakeholders, we have to be very careful so that also we don't catalyze on what also we are fighting of COVID-19 billionaires if now we privatize contraception. Because already we had said, I'm a woman, like me, Rachel Mekali exists as a woman.
Yes.
And for example, if you're having aspects of NHIF that what another sister was saying here before, that does not take in part of contraception as part of NHIF. Even some of the insurance, they don't consider access to contraceptive as part of the discussion. There is a problem. And now when also you're saying one of the characteristics, if now I look at it as someone who is in human rights spaces, it has to be based and driven by human rights and feminist standards of approaches. Because if you're looking in terms of human rights and feminist standards of approaches, it means you're able to make it accessible to every woman, no matter where you are.
And in any case, most of the consumers of contraceptives, if you look at what is available in the market, are actually women.
Majority.
Speaking of money, Kenneth, you talked about underfunding of county government. And what came to my mind is, are we talking about, you see, there's a difference. Okay, let's give an example. You have 100 shillings in your pocket, in your hand. You can decide that 80 shillings goes to alcohol. I don't know, 80 shillings go to this amount. So my question is, we've had a lot of fraud in those county governments. We've had a lot of corruption. Is it that there is underfunding of county governments, or that the county government people are not putting enough money? In any case, the internationally accepted percentage of any budget for health is 15%. Could it be that in the county government, they are not prioritizing health as a component of the budget, and especially contraception and reproductive health? And maybe sometimes they might even put it there, and then if there is a tragedy, they will relocate and reallocate and make some budget. So is it a question of underfunding or a question of priority?
To answer your question, I think it's a little bit of both. Technically, because health is the biggest devolved function, most of the money going to county governments must and should go to. And if you look at those budgets, you'll find that most of it goes to health. Now, what we are talking about is a sub-element of health. Right, so let's say we sent 2 billion to Kisumu County for health only. But under health, you will find there are things. There are non-communicable diseases. There's malaria. It's not only contraception, you get. So the point I'm making about that is that, one, we have an issue with underfunding of counties. The government needs to send more money to county governments, because health is an important function, and we are realizing now, especially if you're seeing how we are struggling with dealing with COVID, because we have not been sending enough money there. So that is an issue that we must deal with, and we must compartmentalize those. So let us urge the national government to send counties more money so they have more room to work within health and other sectors. But when we come to the health sector, you have those things called county health management teams. Now we must also confront them as young people that under health, we are also here. And we have these needs to do with contraception. As women and young men, we want, when you're budgeting, to remember that we have a future, and we need these things to protect ourselves, to plan ourselves. When am I going to school? When am I having a baby? And those things mean the hospital, the other side, needs to have condoms, need to have these things we are talking about. And if we don't get to do that, government will do the things they like every other day. So there are two issues, and we must address both of them at a go.
Yes. So I think that paints a picture of the reality of this subject. And then young people, they say young people are the future of Kenya, and the state of young people, how Kenya will be is related to the welfare of young people. And some of us, sometimes we try to be cheeky and say, the young people are not the future, we are the present. So whether we are the future or the present, notwithstanding, because I think it's debatable really, we are talking about COVID-19. Corona. I know we called it many things. Some musicians called it Nyar Corona, Nyar China.
Akori. Where I come from.
Yeah, so it was baptized many names,
Yes.
In Kikuyu, I heard they call it Kengoki. I don't know where I think they tried to make a name out of it. So we have Corona here. I think it just turned us upside down. And then some of the gaps and some of the challenges that young people face came to the bear. That's when we realized, kumbe our social protection is non-existent. Kumbe these issues around reproductive health are not really, they're not working really. So maybe my question would be, as people who are working, on the ground, working with people, how can we build a system that allows for inclusivity, particularly of the youth, in the realization, or rather in making sure that policies work? And I think you preempted us when you said that we need young people in those committees in the counties. What are the other things so practical that we can use to ensure that if a young lady in Mathare, where Rachel is, if she decides to access her contraceptives in town, it's going to work perfectly. So what can we do? What can be done? What are the things that the young people can do? How can we change things to ensure that policies are working?
If you allow me to begin.
Yeah.
What we're doing today is very important.
Uh-huh.
I was sitting over there with my colleague and telling me this is how to begin it. When we are able to get this kind of conversations on mainstream media that policymakers watch, and they see young people aware that there are things called budgets, and we have a right to participate in those budgets. Well, you will hear a governor or somebody from the governor's office say, but we have public participation forums. I research how people participate in public finance. And one of the biggest problems is, what are the opportunities you're offering people, leave alone young people? So you will hear somebody passing town saying, kesho, saa nane, kujeni, kuna budget, alafu ameenda. You get? But young people are the guys who want to listen to Juliani, or want to listen to a spoken word. Then in that process, get the ideas. They must not attend those forums. See how we can get young people to sit in their own spaces. They must not go to the county government of Nairobi, but get somebody to go where they are and pick their ideas and distill. And the ones that are important, like the ones we're talking about here, take them to the county government, to the county health management team, and let those ideas reflect. So because if they don't reflect in the next budget process, they say, but si tulienda tukasema hizo vitu alafu hakuna kitu ilifanyika. So let's get them engaged in their spaces. But when we get their ideas, let's also remember that a few of them need to reflect so that we want them to continue getting involved. That's just one of the ways. So that I don't take all the time.
Rachel, what can be done?
I think first, even like the important conversation we're having it here, let's localize it. Not every youth has the privilege or the luxury of being on social media or on Facebook or on Twitter. Let's ensure zina get uko mashinani in whichever part of the country that the conversation are going. Because also if you look in terms of the standards on how things work and discussions they also start from a traditional way, like having this discussion. And even you watched in the film that when young people are together and having this discussion in a creative spark. And also, because also, for example, if you look, as much as we're a progressive country and Kenya, we have a progressive constitution, but access to information is very privatized. So many young people don't have information. And now it calls me back, for example, when we are working with our girls and our women. One thing, for me, I'm not, to be honest, this Rachel Mekali, I'm not a pro-abstinence person. I'm a pro-give the right information, let the person decide. Because utambia mtu asi have sex and have sex. Ni umwambie, kama unaenda ku have sex, uko na information enough ya kuweza kujua, uko na accurate information meaning ujue kuna ugonjwa na kuna mimba. Ama in case ziende hoi hai, where can you get help and support? And this one also reduces the aspect of mortality rates of unsafe quack abortion. And that's why even if you see in terms of my politics, I advocate a lot of access also to safe abortion, because if we don't talk about it, many young people will die like the we saw Sister Kwa film. Amekufa because there is access, place safe ya procure abortion, you see. And then the other thing, it's like when you talked about, the way I say it, when you talked about young people in this country, it's usually like a clutch of young men that represent us, whether it's from TV, analysts, or from whatever, and I'm happy to see also Yvonne was part of this discussion, and Zinzi?
Yeah.
Yeah, the moderator.
Even our panel.
Even
to
the
that,
panel.
To that as
But I'm saying in terms of opening up the platform on a national conversation. How many discussions have we have on national TV? Either it's Citizen or NTV or whatever, national media, discussing whatever we are discussing. Because if you go and discuss it there, because I remember there was research that was done by Amnesty, was it 2018?
Yes.
That said media was among us top 3 platform that people believed in terms of information. Not even activists or anything, media. And that's why you will see even in Mashinani, people will be willing kupata the vernacular, is it Ramogi or Milembe FM, kuza kusikiza, to be able to get the information. So let's also partner and localize with local medias. And it reminds me the work I did during this time of COVID with African Voices and UNDP. Or now even with Ghetto Radio, I used to give a lot of information that before you would hear people calling and like, that information is wrong. But at least we are here, can you give the right information? You see?
Yeah.
So the other thing will be like, also like having very progressive policy makers. And I like the way you said, let's have young people. But how many young people in these boards? How many young people in this ministry that are able to shape the discussion?
Yeah.
Because Kenya is a country where majority of us are young, because it's 70% young people.
Yes.
But the discussion are usually controlled by traditional old men about young people's body, young people's discussion.
Very patronizing discussions, actually, yeah.
And that's why also it should be like a spark when the ICPD was here. It should have been like that catalyzing moment for us as young people in this country to start discussing.
Yeah.
And then also the other thing in relation to discussion, now I'll focus on socially community. Let's stop burdening the burden of contraception to young women or women. And this I'll give an example. It's, for example, if I'm having a partner, and then it's like, Mekali, wait after condom. Yes, I carry condom, but I feel it should be our responsibility.
What is kuchota? Unajua, maybe sheng ya mtani. Kwenu sio kama ya kwetu. Because me hiyo sijawahi kusikia. Kenneth inakaa najua hiyo maneno.
Consensual sex.
Kuchipo.
Okay. Kuchota, okay.
The thing I wanted to say.
Yeah, maybe let's listen.
Done.
Rachel, you said.
So I'm saying, like, for example, if now let's say
kuchota is consensual sex.
Let's say, for example, I'm meaning in terms they are consensual. Let's say I agree with Kenneth on consensual fornication. Let me use proper consensual fornication. So if we decide we are going home together, it should be both our responsibility. Because I don't like this idea when most of the time it's usually burden to women. When you kujua periods zako, kujua, I'm like, but also if you knew, kama uko na responsibility kwa produce sperm, also uko na responsibility tunaweza deal na wewe. So it should be those discussions that we are having, like openly discussion that will not victimize people. Because this discussion on contraception is usually like people feel they want to talk about it, but they don't want to talk about it. Because if the moment we start with those conversations, even from the smallest unit, which is the family, it means nobody now will be getting victimized for a busy discussion. And also being clear, people understanding there's difference between family planning and contraception. Because most of the time when you go to clinics, even me, I have this experience that I usually chapa Lions dispensary Uruma. Because I've done this work as a mystery client to see service provider, both private and public, on how they relate to the young people. They should stop when a young woman or a young person, whether it's a young man, coming to a dispensary asking for contraception. They should stop this habit of telling them, you should not start using family planning. It's bad for you, blah, blah, blah. Give me the right information and then I choose what suits me.
Choice, right to information. Kenneth, then maybe if I could play the devil's advocate for once, are there much options of contraceptions for men? Because, women have always said we are overburdened. But what are the available options for men in the market? Maybe that would be a question I'd be asking, because as far as I know, I probably know about male condoms. I know about withdrawal method, if that makes it a contraception. What are the options? And could it be also now something we can even start discussing and telling the manufacturers to give them options?
That stems from a bigger conversation about how we have all been socialized. Who makes the baby? Is it the man or the woman? Who carries the baby? Hold on. Who carries the baby? And therefore, everything, including manufacturing and industry, makes things oriented towards the women.
Aha.
That is why the methods of contraception that you can say you can go out there and buy,
Yeah.
for me, it's a condom and vasectomy.
Yeah.
And we haven't ventured very much on the side of vasectomy. You get?
Yes.
The other one is you must not actually buy it, and it's not a very effective method for contraception. So I agree with you. It's 2021. We cannot be men who are having sex with women and we are expecting them to carry the burden of making sure that they're not pregnant when we both don't want them to be pregnant.
Yeah.
So the conversation need to broaden to get society to understand and believe that the issues to do with reproductive health are not women's stuff. Because that is what it is outside there. Ameshika mimba, amepata ball, ametoa ball. Nani ametoa? It's the woman. Whilst all these things happened with the man, but that can only be done when from the family. And that's why I think there are many people in this conversation. Right now, yes, it's a youth forum, but I think parents and government and the old people and the old men you're talking about have a role to play. We must not let this thing be a young people affair. You go to other countries where government understands that they're young people, they're growing, they're 14, they're 16, they are feeling things, and therefore we have to provide these things for them. And at home, parents also know that this lady or this gentleman is beginning to think and is meeting information that can make him want to do.
But Kenneth, aren't we the very people who are very much against comprehensive sexuality education? Didn't we say that we are Christians? Didn't we say that nafunza watoto wetu tabia mbaya kwa shule?
That's why I said it's 2021. And we have got to get that to everyone else out there.
Yeah.
We are not in 1990. You know, the way my parents were brought up, it's not the way I was brought up. It's not the way the guys who we are raising or we are going to be raising are going to be brought up. You get?
Yeah.
But we are stuck with how parents raise children then, where girls, they're dressed a particular way. If they're going out, they have to come back by 6 p.m. You know, those things, the traditional things.
Yeah.
But they are at home and you have Netflix and you have Wi-Fi.
Access
and
to the phone,
and you have information.
Yeah.
The time for parenting, we're using 1990.
Yes.
So we, as much as we as young people are educating ourselves how to do these things, let us face our parents. Let us face those old men who are running government.
Yeah.
And this is why I also think there are a few people who are the choir. Where you say you're preaching to the choir.
Yeah.
There are a few people in government who are not old,
yes,
but they are young at heart.
Yes.
Who perhaps in their education, in their bringing up, they have learned to do things differently. And we need to identify some of them. They are in this ministry, they are in this department, they are in this media department, probably is an editor there. Let's reach out to them and see how our conversations can get into mainstream. If it doesn't, these problems are going to continue.
Okay, all right. So for me, what I'm liking really, you're talking about some sort of an intergenerational dialogue. You're talking about learning and unlearning as well, because sometimes we learn so much and we become so rigid that we have to unlearn, because we are also soon going to be parents anyway, and we don't know what the realities for them will be in the next.
And that's what I do. For me, that's what sometimes puts me off with many young people.
Yeah.
How do I say? How I get? Father was key.
Yeah.
But Father was in that generation.
Yes.
And also Father feels like,
yeah,
what is this kid telling me? Make sure you're home by this time. Make sure you do blah, blah, blah. And then the things we are trying to deal with come out of this miscommunication that is intergenerational. So we have to find a way. And that's why I said this, coming back to your conversation about CSE. There are people who don't like CSE.
Yes.
And they don't like it for many reasons. They will tell you about they are Christians, the religion, there is culture and all those things. But we also have young people and we have statistics. I'm a research analyst. I can draw you a graph of this country in different countries about young people who have had sex when they are 12 years old. And 10 and 13 and 14. They are.
Yeah.
And there are girls who are giving birth when they are 13 years old.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So we have both of those realities.
Yeah.
There are young people who are already having sex. We have parents who are refusing. And we have church and school and government ministry who are refusing. We have to get these guys to talk. And before they do, we are in a problem. We're in a conundrum.
Okay, I know Zinzi wants to tell me to sort of wind up, but you know what you've done to me, you know, Rachel and Kenneth, you've made me really think about something. You've talked about the church, what's happening in our schools, and could it be that it's also the words that we use and as an anthropologist, sometimes I feel like what's in a name, because I remember some of the challenges we were having when we were pushing for the comprehensive sexuality education was the word sexuality. And for me, I was thinking, a rose is still a rose even by any other name. Even if it meant comprehensive, understand your body education, if the gist was still the same. And then also some of the challenges, and I didn't feel like we captured them enough, was age-appropriate comprehensive sexuality education. So then could it be that as people in policy and as activists, we also need to look at our cultural context so that when you're talking about the subject, we don't offend or try to make the people we are trying to change and reach become a bit antagonistic, because the word sexuality was really a big issue. That also comes about, religion, a very emotive topic. Do you think that's something, we can also do? Yeah.
Where work we have done research on CSE. We did a political economy analysis of comprehensive sexuality education. Yeah. And the biggest thing that came out was the name.
Sexuality.
In the recommendations, we said, let us find another way of calling the thing. Yeah. Because you talk to everyone, they say the same thing.
Yeah.
If there are guys who are below 10, let us talk to them in this manner.
Understand
if
your
they
body.
They are 13 to this age in this manner. Everyone agrees.
Yes.
But I went from mosque in Homa Bay and they said, in our religion, if a child has sex before marriage, they should be stoned and caned 100 strokes.
Yes.
How does that help the conversation?
It doesn't.
So I think, and I agree with you, we have talked to different stakeholders who believe, and I agree with them, that they are old men, they are old women, they are in government, they are out of touch, but they have a point.
Yes.
They have a mandate, and there's a reason why they do that. So let us see how we bridge the gap. To understand what they are saying and where we're coming from as activists, as young people.
And then we sort of find a middle ground. And Rachel, maybe do you feel something?
For me, I'm looking at it on a different perspective, and especially with the theme, form ni kujirepresent. Kama ni mimi najirepresent. So my views are like this as a young person, that, and this one might be, before I say it, maybe I apologize for people who might feel offended for their right of religion.
Yeah.
But I feel also we need to see on how sometimes religion can be part of oppressive in terms of controlling women's body. Because if, for example, we say we don't want to talk about sexuality, or else we are sexually active, and or else people are having sex, we are burying our heads in the sand. So the point is that we are having sex, everybody wants to have sex, and not just sex, meaningful sex, without being worried that if you have sex, you might get pregnant, or because also there's this aspect, people only think it's only for people who are, like, for example, not married, but also if you look in terms of also married couples, they are the biggest also people like who procure abortion. Let's say an example of that. So if you want this discussion to move forward, also it's up to us now, if you look in terms of political analyzing of the all right to contraception, that let's do political education. Let's do political education whereby we can tell even our church leaders that we want to discuss this. Why is it also, if you look in terms of class issue, that let's say, this I'm giving an example, JCC can have this discussion and not a church in Madare or in Kibra. Why is it that we can be like, you can access these services here and here, but you can't have that kind of a discussion and informal settlement? And why is it that when we try to say that young people are not seeking, but there are barriers. Like young people are pushing every day, including myself here. I don't know, Kenneth, if you're a young person.
Yeah.
Young people are fighting every day to resist when they are told that they can't access, let's say, condoms. You see, young people are resisting even during this time of COVID. That why is the government, including young women, on the forefront? And also providing services that the government was supposed to provide. Why is it that the church leaders are not also following that example? Because I believe the role of the church, if you look before, some of these things that we are doing, even here, these are supposed to be the role of the church, ensuring they give right information. If you look, our church has developed from the many years, like receive people in the church. Hakuna mtu ati akona dhambi kubwa mingi if you look, but I don't like the whole idea where also we are having churches, they are against women using contraceptive. And you know what church I'm saying? Which type of religion? They are against also women using family planning. So if you're having this discussion of could you represent, this discussion that we're having it here, let's represent it in terms, we're also holding church leaders accountable. Let's represent it in terms, now schools were closed, university were closed. Most of the young people are getting condoms in school, in university.
Oh yeah.
Sasa umetupa huko Ushago, Machakos, huko Homa Bay. Utapata wapi hizo condoms?
Availability as well.
Where will you get them? So if you're talking about ensuring all these voices are centered in this conversation, let's create more space. Let's continue having this movement where we are bringing different stakeholders and holding them into account. And I like what he said. When you talk about budget processes, people think budget process ni cho itajengwa wapi na hall itajengwa wapi. But now it's the high time when you're going to these budget processes, we're able to say how much money has gone to contraceptive.
What is the percentage?
How
of
much
the health?
money?
Yeah.
See story mingi, but and if we pay money, we are taxpayers, we pay money. Why is it that more money are going for expenditure than what is more of service delivery? So I think we are in the right pace. Let's and I like the role of also activism in the whole discussion.
Yeah.
Because most people listen to artists, which I love if we have more women artists in these discussions.
Okay.
Because also they play a critical role.
Yeah.
I can relate much better with a woman like you.
Yeah.
Maybe you can relate much better with a guy, a boy from, let's say, Wajir.
Rick Poet.
Eh?
Rick Poet, the previous.
Yeah, Rick Poet, yeah. So let's ensure that beyond even us youths, who are artists who are in Nairobi Urban Center, even if it's ghetto, we're able to reach our peer Koko Chini in different forms. Yeah.
You know, like you've raised something very important about class, about inequalities, about the young people are not homogeneous.
And to be clear, Wanda, it's not that inequality has never been in existence. Inequality was there even before COVID. Now during COVID, imekuwa exposed. Where's the feature?
Yes.
Uzuri.
Yeah.
It's sad that we're going through this pandemic, and that's sad also. And may the soul of the loved one, of the families that have lost their loved one, rest in peace. And the people who are sick, wishing them quick recovery. But during this time of COVID, if you're a politician, this message has to go to the policy maker.
Okay.
Unajua uzuri ilitutoshanisha sisi wote iko. Hakuna time ya kukimbia unaenda UK. Sisi wote tumengangana hapa. If you're a policy maker, please ensure money go to the right way, especially when it comes to health. People are suffering in this country. And especially the things we are talking. Because if we are talking, what's your dream? My dream is that I want to be, let's say, to see Kenya being a feminist country with feminist policy. Yeah. But if I can't access contraceptive and then I get pregnant, and I'm giving an example, and I'm not able to get the best services, and then I go to a car, I die, my dream is shattered.
Okay,
Relate with basic example like those. Like the guy, aliruka dem akaenda kwa kwaka kadai akacommit suicide. Hapo ni dream ya watu wawili katika. So inamaanisha a lot of young people who are, some of us maybe in some of the governments, some of us might be in those governmental policy maker. If you're not able to push harder, push more, it becomes hard. But we need to push, we should not give up, but also celebrate our gains and our achievements.
Celebrate our gains. So now we are just wrapping up. And I know the young people who are watching us online are also engaging in the topic. Hashtag Form Ni Kurepresent. Rachel, I feel like she has wrapped up. So Kenneth, do you have final remarks? Yeah.
I think for me, young people have to stand up and fend for themselves. We are the biggest proportion of this country.
Yeah.
I think we should not shy away from keeping that conversation, and people who are making policy need to keep hearing that.
Yeah.
And it's for this reason, for me mainly. Tomorrow, if that baby was actually born, if those guys didn't commit suicide, they would get into a relationship they don't want. They would raise a baby in a circumstance that a baby is not supposed to be raised.
Yeah.
So we have the guys who have mental health issues.
Yeah.
Raising a baby will also have mental health issues. So that baby is the one we are saying is the future of this country.
Yeah.
And those two young people, man and woman, in the next 10 years, we want them to be people who are running organizations in government, in private sector. They're not going to do that if this is happening. And their babies will continue that cycle. This issue is not a young person's issue. Let us get the people who run government today to understand that the stigma we have brought around contraception is undue. the stigma we put around sexual reproductive health is undue. There's a time in this country when HIV was big, and nobody wanted to say, I have HIV, nobody wanted to test themselves, and people died. Then everyone was brought to a table and they agreed, let's test people. Let's agree if you have HIV, you still have a life. There are guys who have lived 15 years later to see their children go to university. Yep. There are children who have lived to go to become 18 to see their parents. And that is important. So for me, wrapping this up, there are young people, there are older people, there's government, there's church, there's civil society, there's everyone. We're just saying the same thing. We all have families, we all have young girls and young men. It is in our interest that they access sexual reproductive health information and contraception commodities that can help them plan their lives, plan their careers, and be productive in the future. And for me, that is the most important thing.
Yeah, so before I forget, just a quick one. I think also as a society, we need to acknowledge the fact that if someone chooses not to have a child, not because they don't want to have a child, we should respect that. Because I think even at the moment, there's a lot of young men that have chosen not, even men, that don't want to have kids. So people should respect that and not demonize them. At whatever.
Yeah, so just to wrap it up, what's coming out strongly for me, destigmatize the word contraception and everything involved, have a multi-sectoral discussion, very respectful discussion, pick allies like in government, in religious, those that are a bit liberal, have them become our allies, engender the discussion, involve the young women, try and eliminate the inequalities and the gaps. All of us are endeavoring for the same thing, it's just the disconnect in terms of discussion. And for me, I think that's where we're going to end it. Of course, it was enriching, but time also, considering the other panelists who are coming. So thank you so much, Kenneth, for just giving us a piece of your wisdom. Thank you, Rachel, for the work you do in Mashinani, but also for your wisdom and insights. So we wrap it there, and over to you, Zinzi.
All right, Wanja, before I let you go, you and your panel, thought-provoking comments from Rachel and both Kenneth as well. Rachel, one question, maybe one or two sentences before, but we will still have more time for Q&A. There's something that you said that was so important that caught my attention at the very beginning, and it's what Wanja had asked on the issue of good characteristics of a health facility, and you say the privacy, right? Who holds our health workers' attitude on that? Should it be the employers? Should it be the unions? Should it be the health workers themselves when it comes to their attitude? So you as a Kenyan, depending on your sexual orientation or depending on what your issue is, you feel that you're a bit safe. My privacy comes first. So who's responsible for that change of attitude?
I think that's a very important question, because also there's patient charter, and the patient charter talks about the right of a patient. Most people don't know about it. Even me, it has caused me to do more research and read. And also, like, when I go to a local office, I'm like, Mkona patient charter. That's time I'll be like, what is that? So for me, reading through it, and also like as way of advocacy for all of us who have that information, is that people should know that they have a right of privacy. If they decide, leo, hata kama ni mzee wangu, nimekuja naye kwa hospitali, nastaki ajue nini natumia, the doctor should respect that.
All right.
You see? So it's very important that we able also to ensure like we have active citizenship around this area of whistleblowers within the health fraternity. That if I feel I was not treated in that hospital and it's being blown, people also are able to write and call out that hospital.
Beautiful. I'll cut you short there because of time, but Okwara, I can tell you also have a comment. I'm coming back with both Okwara and Rachel and Wanja as well for more Q&A. But before we do that, a bit more of entertainment. So first of all, let me thank them. Thank you, Rachel, Okwara, and Wanja. If you're just tuning in, we're taking your questions and comments all throughout the show. You can join the conversation via social media using the hashtag FormNikuRepresent. Following us also on hashtag FormNigani on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, whichever it is that you choose to play on. Now we will change gears a little bit and treat you to more music and spoken word. Our next performer, Hadassah, she wowed us just a few months ago with her lyrical prowess and went on to win the FormNikuRepresent. We will be treated to more spoken word from the amazing Teardrops as well you heard from earlier. But before, right now, let's do a little bit of Hadassah's creativity, and we'll be back with this panel again.
Hadass, the Turkana queen,
Form ni gani? Form ni gani? Form ni gani? Form ni gani? Watu wanapata watoto na watu wanadhani ni normal. Watu wanapata watoto hawana majob si normal. Super ndani ya box kwa inbox ona sasa life in unbox. Weekend ulienda form bila plan na kama utanyesha next month. Future kuna mtoi mtaani atachoma najua. Streets imejaa watoi maboy madem na bado wazazi. Dem akipata borrowing time mwingine utoa mwingine tazama. Isha ni ngumu mingi jukumu ni nani utalaumu. Chakula gharama, hosi gharama, shule gharama. Msichana mdogo amebeba mimba kijana lisko utadhani mariga. Alimchocha ni kichwa tu, dema kasahau kumeza pitu. Sasa na umo na kichwa tu. Wewe kijana usikose kutumia socks nyunginyo bana. Naweka dem kwanga rada usiku mchana. Ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Tanuka bana, jenga ujana. Nasema ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Tanuka bana, jenga ujana. Nasema ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu. Form ni gani na huna plan? Form ni gani? Daughter na son, the first D, get your degree. The second D, panga vile takam ni free. Safe day, sio a safe day. Jipange all day. Dem jipange vile mtu yatakam. Hata ukibaki single mom mtu yatakula bata na jam. Boy kuwa serious na life cherea ma side chick. Focus na men wacha mpango wa kando. Form ni dem kujua about family plan. Form ni boy kujua about family planning. Watoto wachache na wako na afya. Usipojichunga bado utanaswa. Keep maintaining, abstain hadi sipo ready. Hii kitu ni serious, wacha ucheshi. Maisha balaa, cheza kimesi. Ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Tanuka bana, jenga ujana. Nasema ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Tanuka bana, jenga ujana. Nasema ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Ng'ang'ana sana, usiharibu ujana. Hades, the Turkana queen.
Nirushie ka kitu, nirushie ka thao. Ongezea kambao, itasaidia for now. Usinirushie kwa ile, usinirushie kwa hii. Please ni urgent, nirushie sahi. Ndio time si usikia kwa hizi streets za nai. Wewe, babako, babu yako, babu ya babu yako mmeishi mkisema usinirushie ka kitu. Hadi nakani kama mlirushiwa ka kitu. It's a family curse. It's about time we break the family curse na ubadilishe kila kitu. Hawezi ishi ukitegemea binadamu kila siku. Mtoto anaendesha, hauna pesa za diaper, unaishi kama piper. Landlord ukimuona wewe mtoka kiusniper ilhali. Hizi ni vitu zingekuwa sorted out na P2. Kaa uko na plan za kuwa na mtoto baki hivyo tu. Out of the frying pan into the fire. Siko ubaya, usitoke quarantine ukiingia parenting. Covid ni temporary but watoto kuja vipermanent. Na ni lazima uende hadi pumwani jua kunaga kitu kama online delivery. Mshahara imechelewa usinirushie ka kitu. Daido za dawa usinirushie ka kitu. Walai nimelemewa usinirushie ka kitu. I hope unaelewa usinirushie ka kitu. Mshahara imechelewa usinirushie ka kitu. Walai nimelemewa usinirushie ka kitu. Na daido za dawa usinirushie ka kitu. Hope unaelewa usinirushie ka kitu. Usinirushie ka kitu. Sisi wote ni mabega, difference ni vile tumejibeba. Kuna wenye kona vikombe kwa barabara, wamevaa matambara. Na kuna wenye kwa ofisi na suti na tai na kikombe ya chai. Ulizaliwa before wazazi kujipanga. Ukizaliwa walichanga, ukienda shule wakachanga. Ukifunga ndoa wakachanga, ukigonjeka watachanga, ukikufa watachanga. Toka ukue mchanga, ndivyo utarudi kwa mchanga. Binadamu wanachanga. Kama unangoja corona ishe ndio uanze kujipanga, buda unajikaranga. Heri ubaki alone kuliko kusurvive na loan. Darushwa kitu hadi lini unafaa kujipanga. Haifai budget ya pombe kwa covered na $100 bill. Na health insurance cover bado nil. Haifai account ya mwenzako ukiongezewa maziro. When belt yako inazidi kuongezewa mashimo.
Buda nimeshikwa si unirushie ka kitu. Token zimeisha si unirushie ka kitu. Zipi amekuja si unirushie ka kitu. Sina doza karo si unirushie ka kitu. Wife amejifungua si unirushie ka kitu. Sina doza diaper si unirushie ka kitu. Gas imeisha si unirushie ka kitu. Keja imefungwa si unirushie ka kitu. Si unirushie ka kitu. Si unirushie ka kitu.
As promised, we are taking your comments as well as your questions on social media using the hashtag #FormNikuRepresent. I want to toss the first one to Okwara, all right? My question would be, what is the future of movements like this ones? This one's for #FormNikuRepresent, such conversations. What is their future? What does it look like?
Let's get back to that conversation about who is the biggest population in the world right now.
Okay.
The young people. So if you're projecting the future, it's this kind of thing that's going to be in the future. That's one thing. The other thing is because young people are more informed. Young people have ICTs and stuff that can get their voices out there. So the long and short of the answer is, the future of this is that it's going to be mainstream, rather than us guys sitting here and streaming on YouTube.
Mainstream, do you mean that we will start to see these conversations within your boys' club, within the next time you have cocktails with your girlfriends, within your social circles, those ones? You know, this is just on this platform. Will you be having it tomorrow with your boys' club? Rachel, will you be having it tomorrow with your girls over tea, is what I'm saying.
Right. What I was saying is the future of it is broader than this kind of forum, but also taking the conversation out of the media. When people are sitting, that's the future.
That's the future of such conversations.
For me, amongst men, and I must say, to bridge the gap, I remember you talked about me being comfortable talking to a man only. There are men who are comfortable talking with women as well.
Right.
And the conversation just goes on.
Right.
On coffee or on a burger or on listening to spoken word. So I think the future is both getting it out of fringe media into mainstream, but also where we live, getting young people where they're sitting in their neighborhoods, talking about things across gender, but also within their genders.
Okay. Rachel, I'll come to you, but also I would want to engage Wanja on this specific one. Wanja, you're being asked, what are the characteristics of a youth-friendly reproductive health facility? We had her thoughts on that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. What should service providers start thinking about? Talk to them.
Thanks so much, Zinzi. For me, I say, I start with, information, where the location, young people knowing where the youth-friendly facilities are. Well, at least as at now, I know that there is a health facility that is friendly at Kenyatta, or rather they are attempting to have one. And there's another youth-friendly facility somewhere, where there's St. Peter's Crevasse, the Catholic Church.
Yes.
There next, there's a city council place, so they also have that. So other things around youth-friendly is about flexibility in terms of time. We are talking about the attitudes of the health workers. Your average young person does not want to be, patronized. Other characteristics are options, being given options. This is what you'll do, this is what you'll do, this is what you'll do. We are also talking about affordability. Rachel talks about free, but overall in the broader health discussion, people talk about affordability, which is subjective depending on one's money access. We are also talking about accessibility in terms of physical location. If we look at it in terms of youth with disabilities, we are talking about built environment. We are also talking about issues around privacy and respect.
Wow.
So those are some of the things. We're also talking about the general, the hospital there's that mood you get when you get to the hospital. So I remember one day we were in a consultation with young people and they said it should be painted, it's like a psychological way where, you want to go to a place where there is some sort of a graffiti. You don't want
the physical look of it.
Yeah, the physical look of it. Some young people also talked about a youth-friendly facility being run by young people. So they are also feeling like, when you find a mama who's like 50, they feel like it's like an extension of their mom. Of course, we are talking about...
But there's space for such people as well in the health facility.
Certainly there is.
You feel more comfortable with an older person.
Well, but also there is no space in the sense that sometimes they feel like they don't, like there's a difference, like for even myself, sometimes when I'm with the young people, if I'm invited and I'm in a jeans and a kofia, versus when I've just showered very well, I want to look serious, how people engage. And remember, Zinzi, some of these things are issues around perception. There is a person whom you'll go, alafu akose kurudi for a follow-up. But there is a person atakuja, you make them so comfortable hadi aseme nilikuwa na kaich kadogo na hapo kwa private reproductive health. So when we are talking about this, we are talking about the nature of subjectivity of this service and how people perceive, respect, and how they are treated. Other things really has always been affordability. I think I've said that.
Yeah.
So those are some of the characteristics, but you agree with me that it also differs from one place to another. For example, use of language. Do we use local languages? Like, for example, in Mashinani, then you want the youth-friendly officer to speak in Kikuyu if it's somewhere na uko ndani. So we're also looking at, it's not a one-size-fits-all. We are talking about continuously tailor-making it for you. Can we have such a facility? Maybe on the market day you can have a tent.
Yeah.
Will they be ashamed? Do you want to invite them? Do you want to meet them where they are? So those are some of the characteristics.
I love what Wanja has said. Okay. Sure.
In the generation where young people are ordering KFC and guys are ordering whatever they want and they come to them.
Yeah.
We have to get ourselves to the place where we are, again, when we're saying it's 2021, where things can come to young people. So if those centers are not working, if you're going there and you're going to find another of your mom, when you sneak, they don't know that you're going to look for these things. We can get guys to use these things to bring services to young people.
And those are very important comments. There are things that I personally also never thought about, the language that is being used, the physical of it. I think we're so used to seeing hospitals and clinics have this specific look that makes people tense up. Okay.
Blue, white.
This other question is now for Rachel. Rachel, you're asked, what must be done urgently to reverse the negative trends that have been brought about by lack of access or family planning because of the pandemic?
I think the question should have family planning and contraceptive. Me hakuna family na plan, me natumia contraceptive. So I think what should be done urgently, learning from the pandemic, what I said based on my conversation, is not like things as zilikuwa mbaya. And I'll keep on insisting the way two of my colleagues have said. Make those space friendly. And when we mean friendly is that whether you want to go and seek services or not, you can just walk in and have a conversation without being judged. Because even, let's be honest, even in this panel, there are spaces as much as you're known,
yes. Yes.
So if we don't have those spaces where we can say, unaweza ingia na upatie service inakuwa ngumu. So if there's something that needs to be done urgently that would have prevented the 4,000 teenage pregnancy, that even I don't want to say teenage pregnancy, but also the defilement that happened during this time of pandemic for the young girls. It would have been if there were those friendly clinics and available. Because I say there are no facilities. Also, we have to be honest. That's why I'm not pro affordability. I'm pro let it be free. Because if we can't ensure it's free for everybody to access, it becomes a problematic. It becomes a problematic where if I go to Ruma Hospital or Ruma Lions and then I don't find the service, I'll go to the dispensary in my local community where maybe I have to pay 100 and then nadungwa maji. Nikidungwa maji na kuja kurealize after 2 months niko na mimba. Who takes that responsibility? Because these are cases we deal with on daily basis.
Right.
So if this institution would have been friendly before and continue being friendly, would avoid such kind of cases.
Okay, because of time, I'll let Wanja have the last say if it's a comment or a question.
Maybe I'll just build up into the question you asked, Rachel.
Okay.
And I think some of the negative trends we've seen were actually teenage pregnancies amongst school-going girls. Well, at least in Kenya, we have a return to school policy at the Ministry of Health. And mine, and I'm speaking this with a lot of empathy because I'm also a board member of a high school where we had a girl who was pregnant. And mine is just some sort of appeal to say that because there are some girls who got pregnant, there are some girls who really got pregnant, we have to make sure that we also now don't demonize them too much, that they'll fall somewhere in the cracks and that's the end of their life. So let's also exploit some opportunities like return to school.
Wow.
Let's have girls going back to school. It's a pregnancy, there is a baby, yes, but you can still continue with your education. But also for me to just say that the people in non-governmentals and the government should continuously work together, because sometimes I feel like these contraceptive discussions have been left to the activism and the NGO people, so much so that the government sometimes seems like they don't have full commitment. So it's just to say that the same way everybody is working together, we need to work together on this subject, but importantly to destigmatize it, so that tomorrow when I'm popping a pill with my friends, I don't have to hide somewhere.
Right.
So we have to normalize.
Okay.
I think the word is normalize.
So Rachel, I'll give you the last because we need to move on to our peak performance by Juliani.
Yeah, it's
okay,
just direct.
Okay.
Like my appeal will be, there's also like partners like media,
yes,
and the Ministry of Health.
Yes.
The way we are told, wash your hands, wear a mask, it will be the same. Access to contraceptive, family planning, you can find it in this place and this and this. So the role of
PSC adverts.
Mutai kagwe tafadhali. And this is not even tafadhali, it's a must. Like the way we do the COVID advertisement and everything, let's do it so that we're able to prevent more cases of unwanted pregnancy, and also like we have lost even a lot of women because of quack abortion.
Yes.
So if we're able to access these services of contraception, we're able to prevent and protect the lives of Kenyans.
And it's not just abortion. Think about it, even the STDs, your health in general. It's your sexual health in general. All right.
HIV and AIDS.
Yeah. So this conversation can continue, but asante sana Okwara, Rachel, and Wanja for taking lead on this second part of the segment. Our last and most important, well, not most important, but the highlight of our next performance is by a man whose personal story I, as Nziki Biku, I have enjoyed telling as a journalist. He is passionate about entertainment and uses his platform to speak on social and justice matters. He never shies away from adding his voice to social political dialogues. Ladies and gentlemen, you know him. He's none other than Juliani.
Yeah, nikawa napiga picha ya ID, hawa smile ni kubaya ai, wanacheza bano na makademia na salafu wanalienda ignorance, walitucheka eti nika tumechanganyikiwa ka pudding, upuzi mazuri haitoki kwangu, kano kia 3310 even na bluetooth darasa, nilikuwa na kabak, Kenya imechange ni shofa, bado na kabak left, ukweli ni boring boy, mbona mbongi, angusha jiwe juu ya mkono tujue nani first body, tumechoose kupuuza, opinion inatupunguza, kelele necessary ni ambulance, zingine hatusikini nuisance. Zitaendeshwa na nani kasi sisi, zitanunuliwa na nani kasi sisi, tutabadilishwa na nani kasi sisi, simanishi mwingine ni wewe na wewe na mimi. Wewe na wewe na mimi. Ninasema wewe na wewe na mimi. Wewe na wewe na mimi. Hatutaki ni kiatu si black, wanaidharau eti si wax, tukiwa kwa streets tuna beatbox, but the present ni kichana na una locks, wana expect ni waombe fair, nisaidie na blue dude, nywele yako si refu ya ponytail, shuka matuta tu, waliniambia nikawajibu, si settle for less man, na dan kwa rims ya success nipite, hata bila high jazz koti beat man, nina mentality ya Rosa Parks, kwa bus, kwa kiti sitoki, kasi sisi sioni, relax, ka nywele imepakwa dax, nini wewe, zitaendeshwa na nani kasi sisi, zitanunuliwa na nani kasi sisi, kutabadilishwa na nani kasi sisi, simanishi mwingine ni wewe na wewe na mimi, wewe na wewe na mimi, ninasema wewe na wewe na mimi, wewe na wewe na mimi, siachi mpaka nchi inipa. Yeah, exponential potential, walitudharau, aha. Who's laughing now? Exponential potential. Wana drown kwa machozi zao, tunaogelea kwa jasho zetu. Who's laughing now? Milioni from 10 bob, nilitoa wapi extra zeros? Jiulize mbona donut ina shimo, shingo shot kati ya mfuko, doni ligo, dish kwa rooftop, si DSTV ya kuomba dish thing. Vampire vegetarian, whiteheads, non-believers, wanatuita high class. Soma college ya night class, results alitamani payslip, toka ndivyo Peters, mpaka penye mefika, got finger, ime move street. Walitudharau. Who's laughing now? Exponential potential. Wanadrown kwa machozi zao, tunaogelea kwa jasho zetu. Who's laughing now? Nasema Who's laughing now? Exponential potential. Achana now. Toka kitambo nimekuwa photogenic. Wazazi waliinsist na story ya photosynthesis. Nani ajui udaktari si lazima umrevu. Kwa karatasi ya damu malizange hesabu. Ukampo bwana need more ink, more pages, jina zifit kwa list. Exaggerate kakufunika panta na bandage. Ndova yezi hata nguvu ya mosquito. Missing important. Bila mimi mama mboga hata hana customer. Ngumu kwangu kizungu fluent, but uwezi command umati na influence. Walitudharau. Akina nane? Who's laughing now? Exponential potential. Wanadrown kwa machozi zao, tunaogelea kwa jasho zetu. Who's laughing now? Nasema Who's laughing now? Exponential potential. Achana na. Kuku yangu inalia ina swine flu, iliponiona ni karibu. Hey! Bula kumamaliza. Potential. What would happen if what would happen
Siku mingi tumeonana, tuna mipango za kuoana. Misioni nikikasana sana, njoo baadaye tutaachana. Si kila siku hesu, unatakaje tutaishi vipi huku? Unaonaje? Una mipango ama wanipanga tu? From Nigani.
X na X kwa S nikiandika sasa kwa SMS. Kilicho na mwanzo lazima kiwe na mwisho. Tali aligo akishaka mkanye asiji west. Kamsoba Kim Kardashian anataka tuku Putin kama Russia. Tiger Woods alichase holes kwa goals na off court. Of course hakuna tofauti ya great men na get men. Wote wanarungu, sisi ni same but sisi see them. Kwa hivyo situshuku kumarithi fiti, ni manzi anajua kuchagua nyanya marikiti. Sikupigi Kiswahili malinguistic. You're more to me than kuchagua drapes na color to paint ceiling.
Siku mingi tumeonana, tuna mipango za kuoana. Misioni nikikasana sana, njoo baadaye tutaachana. Si kila siku hesu, unatakaje tutaishi vipi huku? Unaonaje? Tunaendaje? Una mipango ama wanipanga tu? From Nigani.
From huna lazima formula. Mwanaume si tu keje iko kwa trouser. Inside na on the side, future tense. Toka base, skuma range, zungusha fence. Super fresh, nitakuprotect kama Santa, nikuwe na maelf. Siko busy ni priorities. You can see me time josina. Natafuta unga, niwe hodari jogo. Nina plans za leo and many more. Tuliambua six pack, broad shoulders, height. Beauty ya mshini, view from behind. Only shimo 5 kuingia ni ya nyoka. Sifa za kuchafua meza, hizo plan cancel. Wesi meja.
Siku mingi tumeonana, tuna mipango za kuoana. Misioni nikikasana sana, njoo baadaye tutaachana. Si kila siku hesu, unatakaje tutaishi vipi huku? Unaonaje? Tunaendaje? Una mipango ama wanipanga tu? From Nigani.
Hii life was network. Tunajekelea kama Mkenya na aswa, anakunja ulimi Jamaican patwa. Rizaza sauja loose cruise a bed, nikelelea mtoi 3 AM. When our best days ni kupita kwa frame, when bright days in a dim. Hata bishop, queen, king kwa chess, kama pona nahitaji hand to move from one place. Sita kutoka kama British EU, nina plans forever yanza na yes I do. Gear automatic D, inasimama kwa B. Will I find her pretty? The one God alini gift, ama nitakuwa the other end ya IG. Slay queen na kipost
siku mingi tumeona na tuna mipango za kuoana. Misioni nikikaa sana sana, juu baadaye tutaachana. Si kila siku hey subu, unatakaje tutaishi vipi huku? Unaonaje tunaendaje? Una mipango ama wanipanga tu from Nigani?
In this day and age, pop culture, art, and social media have such a strong influence, and that is undeniable. And Form Nikuri present, courtesy of Form Nigani, has showed us how evident all that is. Nevertheless, the show has come to an end. And we take this moment to say thank you so much for being part of this. And that not only in terms of the conversation that you've seen here, but we can be able to take all this forward, be it tomorrow when you're visiting your boys' club or when you're having this conversation with younger people, that we will be in a better place and we will be saying that we have come from a bit far. Thank you so much for being part of today's show and being part of the conversation on social media, be it on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. My name is Nziki Biko. I've been your host for today. And have yourselves a lovely evening.
Siku mingi tumeonana, tuna mipango za kuoana. Misioni nikikaa sana, juu baadaye tutaachana. Si kila siku hey subu, unatakaje tutaishi vipi huku? Unaonaje tunaendaje? Una mipango ama wanipanga tu from Nigani?
X na X kwa S nikiandika sasa kwa SMS. Kilicho na mwanzo lazima kiwe na mwisho. Chali aligo akisha kam, mkanyi asiji west. Kamsoba Kim Kardashian, anataka tu kuputin kama Russia. Tiger Woods alichase holes kwa goals na off court. Of course, hakuna tofauti ya great men na get men. Wote wanarungu, sisi ni same, but sisi see them. Kwa hivyo situshuku kumarithi fiti, ni manzi anajua kuchagua nyanya marikiti. Sikupigi Kiswahili malinguistic, you're more to me than kuchagua drapes na color to paint ceiling.
Siku mingi tumeonana, tuna mipango za kuoana. Misioni nikikaa sana, juu baadaye tutaachana. Si kila siku hey subu, unatakaje tutaishi vipi huku? Unaonaje tunaendaje? Una mipango ama wanipanga tu from Nigani?
From huna lazima formula, mwanaume si tu keje iko kwa trouser. Inside na on the side, future tense, toka base, skuma range, zungusha fence. Super fresh, nitakuprotect kama Santa, nikuwe na maelf. Siko busy ni priorities, you can see me time josina. Natafuta unga, niwe hodari jogo. Nina plans za leo and many more. Tuliambua 6-pack, broad shoulders, height. Beauty ya mshini, view from behind. Only shimo 5 kuingia ni ya nyoka. Sifa za kuchafua meza, hizo plan cancel, we si meja.
Siku mingi tumeonana,